So we're talking to Maureen Caouette, who has 3 pieces in the alternative process photo show at the Davis Art Gallery. And she's working with an interesting process that involves encaustics and photo collage. So if you could start out by just explaining a little bit about what your process is and what you're doing.
Well, my process it's a storytelling process. And I take either orphan photographs or family photographs. And a lot of mine, I kind of mix them together. This group actually has more family photographs in. And I make a photocopy of it. And from there, I can manipulate the photograph either through my computer, or I can do it just playing around with the photocopy machine. From there, I can either, with some of my pieces, I embedded it into wax, where the wax is warm, and I put the image down into the wax and spoon it on so that the wax and the ink they join. And at that point, after a while, and you really have to spoon it, spoon it, spoon it until you feel like you're dying. And then you start wetting the background, and you take the paper away so the image is floating. But you're really planning in levels, almost like Photoshop, but by hand, as I like to say, because you have to, with one of the pieces I have from my sketchbook, I have letters, I did some imprints of lace wax. I put wax in lace and then put the lace on it, then took the lace off so the wax stays in it. But the last thing is getting that photo in, to float over it. And they were photos that were from many different years. The one with where I wanted the transparency, that's another process, because I wanted to be able, the photographs to float like through a window, through an image, that you're looking out the window and these are women's lives. That's where it's a process we use a lot with altered books and altered arts with photography. Again, making a photocopy, you don't damage the photograph.
Right.
Manipulate the photograph as you want to, blow it up, cut out parts, whatever. But then from the paper, you're taking onto, okay, here's the paper, the image is on the paper, you're going to put, usually it's about 5 coats of matte medium. You can use gloss, I prefer matte medium, and it's one way, let it dry. Put it the horizontal way, let it dry. So you're really building up, and then at that point, flip it over again, release the paper from the back. Rubbing it, a little bit of water, I put a sponge on it, then kind of, just sit there, listen to some music, and you're releasing it. You're making all these wonderful spitballs, kind of thing.
Right.
And then after that, you've got a plastic transparency of your image. At that point, I did a lot of controlled tearing around it, depends upon how I wanted. Then I used wax to put it on one piece of lacy paper. I don't know, I forget the name of the paper, but it's very delicate paper.
Sure.
You could use a variety of papers, but it has to be almost transparent. I wanted that lacy curtain quality. And then I put another piece of lacy paper on it, and the whole thing was painted with encaustic medium on a piece of wax paper, so I could release it again. Then I blew it with my torch, with my heat gun, so that it would drip, but still keeping the wax medium and the holes would appear. And that was easier for me to have the image sandwiched than to put the image onto the lacy waxed paper. Because if you blow use your heat source or your blowtorch too much on the image, it floats away. I've had that a few times. And that's why you don't want to just use your originals. I would never use originals with it. I wanted the transparency. I had to deal a lot with the letter quality. With most letters, people would use both sides, particularly during the war, because they were mailing them away. And if you can't get you get the transparent quality right away, but the other image is showing through from the back.
So that's harder to read.
And I really wanted to use originals. I happened upon at a flea market this wonderful box of letters from World War I and World War II, from mothers and wives to their sons abroad. And some right in the United States, but they were going to be leaving. And then the holiday thing. So that's how Women Waiting Watching came about. These women, they spent their lives. Sometimes they didn't see or hear from them for a year. And we have email now and video conferencing and Skyping. So they were always seeing their loved ones abroad, men or women. But now it's, but then it wasn't that way.
Well, and that piece is different from the other two in that it's also kind of an installation. It has a sculptural quality. There's an actual door in it. How did that come about? How did it end up coming off the wall?
Some people have said, did the door lead the project? I've been accused of that by other artists, but I can't say that because when I saw the door, back 10 years ago. I've had that door a long time. It's from 1902, from the Goddard School. It was being thrown out. There were never any panes in it when I got it. And I saw that, and I have other windows, but this was the largest window I've ever gotten. And I knew I wanted something transparent that you were looking through. As a person with ADHD, I spend a lot of time looking through windows because I can't sleep. So you'd sit and wait because you have to go to bed at 8. So I'd look and watch the traffic I lived in a village. And so I grew up looking through windows, and having a mom from Europe, we would take walks at night or drives to see how Americans lived, because you were looking through windows, how do people live? So that whole idea of voyeur, my husband even laughs at the voyeur part of looking through windows, and women spent a lot of time with that. So this is the beginning of what will be an installation piece. My ideas, I have a variety of other windows. I've got a lot of people out there looking for certain windows for me.
Oh, wow.
And to show passages in family lives, not just women, but family lives, so that you can walk through a large space. And my goal is to get it voice activated, so that some of the stories would be read as you come up to them, but that's like a long way down the road. But I know this was the first piece in it.
Sure.
So I feel good about it. I call them labor of love because I'm a landscape painter otherwise. My degree is in sculpture. I like mixed media, but it is very physical.
Right.
This has sort of a mixture of both, where it is three-dimensional. So it's a lot of fun.
So how much trial and error is involved in a process like what
The women waiting watching was huge because I knew what I wanted. I knew where and as a teacher, I'm very much project-based learning, where I know where I want to be.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to step us
figure
back.
out how to get there.
Right. And I teach that as for teaching methods, the frameworks and all that stuff, because it gives me my we're here, I know where I want to be. Yes, that window drove some of it. I knew I wanted it in that window. I knew I wanted the curtain effect. How was I going to get there? It took hours and hours and hours to get that transparent quality, to keep the holes in the paper. So that, because I originally wasn't using the medium release, where it was like a piece of plastic.
Right.
I was floating it onto the way I did the other pieces, where you put the image right into the wax.
Sure.
Well, the image floated away every time
Right.
so that was, it was hours
So
and
then
hours.
once you arrived on
Right.
the
But
media thing, then that changed it.
And that was trial and error. I read a lot. I have a lot of magazines. I go to the Encaustic conference now. The International happens to be in Massachusetts, so it's I only get to do 3 days of the 10 days they have, but I learn so much when I go there. I feel like a babe in the woods, because they bring people back from the 70s who started with, because Encaustics is very old. The encaustic art started in 500 BC. So the use of wax, and they have historical reference to it in the art history books. But the resurgence has come up in the last few years, and there's many different ways to use it. I've taken classes, I'd go to school for it. Same with painting, but now I've done its crossover with a lot of it. Yeah.
Let's see. So we're going to do one final question. I have to think of what it is very quickly. I think it's really interesting how the content of your pieces is very historical, but you're kind of mixing the personal with found letters or things from other people. Like, how does that work? Do you see that as being different ways of looking at the same experience, meaning that your personal experience is also universal, or are you just kind of mixing it together because that feels like the right thing to do?
It's interesting you say that, the universal appeal, because originally with the door piece, Women Waiting Watching, I had not planned the center panel that way. And I happened to go to a big flea market, and I was looking for old envelopes. I was looking for stamps for another project. And the letters were all from World War I and World War II, with war ration books, food ration books. And I went, oh my God. And then I happened to stay at a B&B, and this woman had a picture of herself as a baby, and her father was going off to war, her parents. And she said, that was the last picture we had of my dad with us. And her father died.
Right.
She said, and that means so much to her. And I thought, oh my God, this is the whole story here. I didn't put men specifically in this. I started with the center panels. There were 4 different ones with men in it. I said, you know what, that's another story. I'm starting just with the women, and I'm putting the letters in And there were some wonderful ones. My husband's parents are antique dealers, and once I told my mother-in-law, she said, "Oh, I've got some great ones. Here's these weird little cards, to my soldier son." And again, there was a certain amount of spontaneity that, okay, I'm going this way. The story was still being told, but again, that story became more of a universal story, where the keeper and Stone Roots were more of a personal story. The keeper has more of, it has the universal appeal of that we take care of our families, and because it's about mental illness, where the Stone Roots is about our roots, and Worcester's a big part of that. I am a first-generation American. I just ran to New York to see my cousins fly in. I had seen them 20 years from Australia. So I grew up with that. Almost every couple of months we were at Kennedy Airport. Auntie this was coming in, cousin that was coming in from Australia, England, Ireland. And I know that feeling when I worked in Worcester with the immigrant kids at Goddard that
it's still happening.
Yes, it's still happening. And a lot of people forget that. People who are of Irish descent here are fifth generation. I grew up where when I walked into my home, our clothes came from Ireland. I only ate Irish food. My mother could swear in Gaelic and pray in Gaelic. And so there's still a lot of that people forget are going around. Yes, it's different ethnic people, oranges that it's going on with, but it still is there. And I think that's really important to celebrate even our own backgrounds, that when you ask people how they celebrate a family, like, Christmas, New Year's, spring, we all have something that has been passed on. And that's what a lot of my pieces are about, the story pieces.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your process.
Thank you.